My name's Matthew Hearn, and this is the second in a series of exhibitions I've curated called RIFF.
I'm William Cooper, I'm the assistant curator at Baltic. I've been working closely with Matt Hearn and Sebastian Trent in the realisation of both RIFF and this part of the exhibition, RIFF.
Within RIFF, I'm really interested in this idea of kind of abstraction with a small a, kind of subtle interventions in the work.
I've become very interested as we've been working on this idea of sort of the expanded medium of painting and how the mode of production behind a work is more important than its definition.
So works that appear on face value to be one thing, but within them there's a rift in the reality. There's these subtle kind of manipulations or these kind of processes of corruption or vandalism or obscuring of the image that's taking place.
I was thinking about how to work with a singular image and make a very slight low-level intervention. So part of what I'm doing is I'm kind of reconfiguring the image. I don't want to, obliterate what was once there, but I do want to maybe rearrange the focus, and I'm interested in how a single cut can actually do that within both the surface material and how the image is then put back together again.
This is a work by an artist called Fabien Hess, and these are a series of works that she's recovered from the hard drives of her computer. And they're images that at one point have been floating around on her desktop and which she's kind of discarded to the trash bin. And there's a process of corruption by which the computer overwrites the image. And using trash recovery software, she's able to recover these images, and the actual disfigurement, the conflation of imagery that takes place is something that's being automated by the computer in the process of trying to erase the image, and she reverses that process, kind of bringing these images back to life, and then takes these kind of low-grade images and reproduces them as these large pieces on silk. The silk is itself degrading, and she's really interested in that idea that the physical material through which the image is rendered is itself falling apart and collapsing in on itself.
Hi, my name's Sebastian Trent, and this work here is called Blue Distemper. I see it quite like a painting, but it's disguised as a photograph, and here it's blown up from a photograph that was only 6x4 to nearly 5 meters high.
Within the curation of the exhibition, scale and a shift in scale is something that we've been really thinking about. So for example, here we have a very large abstract painting by Ellis, but within his work he often brings together these sculptural objects with the paintings, and they a sort of play off, they play against each other in some ways. And in juxtaposition to that, we have these very small works by Chiappe. And believe it or not, these are pencil drawings, but these absolute minute pencil drawings with incredible amounts of detail in that are themselves almost unbelievable.
I'm not just enlarging the photographs to make them bigger, I'm also enlarging them so that you can see that level of detail, and you can see tiny, tiny little degradations of the surface. And other details are basically the result of my intervention. So the edge where I've cut, although it looks sharp at the scale of the original, you can actually see the fibres of the underlying support for the photograph.
The relationship between photography and painting really comes to the fore within the exhibition. And this is maybe an interesting example of this, a large ornamentally framed oil painting. But it's an oleograph, which is actually a photographic print that has been affixed to a canvas and then has been painted on top. It's kind of a colouring in job, but there's a sense that like the veneer of a painting has been applied atop of a photograph. So maybe what looks like the most traditional painting in the show is actually a photograph.
During the installation, Matt and I had many discussions that there were possibly more photographs than paintings in this show, and what that really meant about a show that was dealing with contemporary painterly issues. And that idea that painting is this ever-expanding field and can incorporate ideas in other mediums, and a sort of approach to making your work is more important than what the actual work becomes at the end. And I think it's this approach that we try to develop, or try to see in other artists. Their desire to work in a painterly fashion and to produce work that references painting and its histories, but isn't necessarily a painting itself.
Once, when I was searching
vitrine holds some examples of my melted photographs. I'm always melting photographs. I've got a large collection of photographs that I melt. And so this is a sample of them, so you can get a sense of the scale difference that goes on here when I blow my works up. Essentially, using paints and chemicals, I melt the photograph, and I end up moving the photographic emulsion around with a paintbrush, and it liquefies this, the surface of the photograph. It becomes extremely painterly, and it becomes, I see it very much as a painting. After it liquefies and then dries again, it's not as stable, and so it cracks over time, and it ends up very much getting an aesthetic of kind of like an old age painting where you have crazing across the surface.
What seems to be happening with a lot of the works in the show is that people are thinking about ideas concerned with painting and the principal tenets of painting, but they're realizing a lot of these ideas through photography, be it kind of image construction, image making, or the kind of ideas of kind of surface pattern and texture that we might associate with painting.
So my name's Tom Ellis, and this is my painting entitled Two Women. It's drawn from an image of popular culture from Lads magazine. And what I think is interesting about painting is that there's no sense in which you're trying to reinvent the art object as something completely new. You're actually moving into an area that's been inhabited by artists for millennia, and in a way artists nowadays are trying to discover what's possible within painting. One of the things that I sort of want to open up for myself in that quest is the space to make paintings that can be quite unruly, possibly not always unresolved, but even if they're unresolved, if there's an aspect of that painting that I enjoy, I try and come up with a strategy for holding on to that. And one of those things is to introduce this furniture, or kind of sub-furniture, which is so these two kind of bed-like structures that I place underneath, which draw out the colours of the painting in some ways. So in a way, the furniture is there to diminish the painting's authority and therefore allow the painting to be more relaxed.
So juxtaposed with the oleograph, we have a piece of work here by Simon Bedwell, and this is a series of recycled billboard posters, essentially advertising photography, that have then been reworked with kind of heavily impastoed paint. And I think that this is doing something very similar to what the oleograph is doing. It's taking kind of base photographic material and it's turning it into a painting. Within this work, there's a real kind of rift and a disruption, this highly kind of artificial kind of advertising image that then has been partially obliterated through this heavy gestural paint. So as well as this idea of a rift or a disturbance that might exist within individual works within the show, we were also really interested in this idea that the exhibition itself would be a rift and a disturbance into the gallery, so that it kind of displaced the previous exhibition, but through that process works were left behind, or traces of the previous exhibition continue to exist. So there's works by Nadine Fenson, by Tommy Grace and Kate Owens, and by Stephen Emanuel that exist as kind of traces or remnants or leftover elements of the past exhibition.